one of the things that kills founders and our dreams is that we do a lot of planning and we don't launch out. We plan, we look at figures, we go to Preston, we look at data, we see how data works against us, and we just don't start.
You're always looking to get the perfect product out, but you're never really going to get a perfect product. And that's why you have version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, launch and go.
I'd love to welcome you all to this session, which is Scaling Beyond Borders, Navigating New Markets. Now, as we know, Africa is a continent with diversity and potential, but expanding into new markets comes with its own set of challenges. Now, today we're going to explore the strategies that African startups have used to scale across the continent. And we have an exceptional lineup of speakers today. And joining us is Tunde-Anjous. Hello, Toun.
Hi.
Now, Toun is the founder of the People Practice, where expertise in talent management and organizational efficiency is key to growth.
Thank you.
And we have Olufemi, co-founder and CTO of LifeBank. Hello, Ayo.
Hello.
So Ayo's groundbreaking work in healthcare logistics has saved and transformed lives across borders. Can we give Toun and Ayo a round of applause, please? Thank you. Great. And then to my left, we have Babajide Durashola, General Manager of Nkopa. And he is a pioneer in providing affordable access to products like solar energy, smartphones, and other essential goods. And then we have Preston, Ideh, who is at the forefront of providing data-driven insights to empower businesses navigating Africa's complex landscapes. So again, please, can we give our speakers and panelists a round of applause? Thank you. Okay, so whether you were a founder looking to expand your startup or an investor looking for insights into Africa's next big opportunities, I encourage you to take advantage of the wisdom that's going to be shared here on the panel today. Okay, let's get started. Now, as we kick off and get into the meat of the conversation, I wanted to talk a little bit about the challenges in scaling across markets. So expanding into new markets means dealing with new regulatory frameworks, consumer behaviors, and just logistical challenges on a whole. So I'm going to start with you, Ayo. LifeBank operates in a critical space where logistics is paramount. So can you tell me what some of the hurdles you've experienced are in encountering how you had to work across borders and how you've tackled them?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Just a quick introduction of what LifeBank do and where we are at the moment. LifeBank is a healthcare startup where we fix problems for hospitals and other healthcare clinic or something like that. We currently operate out of 3 countries in Africa, and we're still expanding. So for us, around logistics, right?
Yes.
Each country has its own unique case, and regional solutions are needed, right? For us, internally, we call ourselves a multimodal logistics business, where we look into the system where we are trying to expand to, and then see what really fits into that solution where we are going to, right? We use drone, we use boats, we use canoes if possible, right? Internally, we have a structure, it's called smart logistics, where the system looks into the order coming into the system and say, okay, this is the best operational mode you should use, right? We rely on a lot of technology. I would say LifeBank is a technology-first company. So basically, 80% of decisions are made by technology because humans are prone to making errors, right? We make judgment based on how we feel, how we think. But if you have a set of structures that you've already created, the system takes those structures and says, this is what we should do, and advise you based on how you should approach that.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Ayo. And Toun, expanding into new regions, and it involves building new teams and building new teams for local markets. I'd really like to get your thoughts on what strategies have worked for you especially when managing sort of your talent and organization across different cultures in Africa?
Thank you so much, Louisa. First of all, I want to say how, can you see the difference between the men and the women? The men are so casually dressed, you know, and the women are. And I was saying to Babajide earlier, I really should have come as a man, you know. Well, thank you again, Louisa. Just diving into it. So from a talent, from a people perspective, I think if you're going into a new market, and what we've done in the past is just to make sure that we sort of survey the landscape. You want to hire local. First of all, there are lots of regulatory frameworks that ensure that you hire local. You can't go from Nigeria into Rwanda, for instance, or go into Kenya and imagine that you're going to have 100% Nigerian team, right? In any of those, there are regulatory frameworks that disallow that. So the first thing is to hire local. And second thing would be to have either a legal expert or a HR consultant within those regions that can help you sort of tell you where you should be looking at, who you should be looking at as well, in that regard. Then you also have to look at things like culture. Africa is such a lovely continent, but no two countries have the same culture. Even within Nigeria, we have different tribes with different cultures and different values. So it would also be to go in and ensure that you have similar cultures around the entire company. So knowing that you're going in with a certain percentage of your people, but you're being a bit open-minded to know that the why stays the same. So the purpose of the company stays the same, but the how is going to be very different. And as a company, you have to be very flexible for the different hows that would come your way. So it's one, just going with an open mind. Two, ensuring that you have someone local or a company that's local, or legal expert that is also following you in that, but ensuring that the culture stays the same but can be expressed in different ways according to the different companies. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I think there's a point there about flexibility, but then also making sure that there is a unified single mission.
Exactly.
That the company is aligned to. And Babajide, I wanted to ask you, particularly because M-Copper has expanded into so many different African regions. Can you tell me a little bit about those regions and how you've adapted your products and services to meet the cultural nuance in each?
All right, great. So M-Copper is the largest connected asset financing company in Africa. And so as of today, we operate out of 5 markets. So Kenya being our first home market, then Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa, which is the baby of the house. And so when you think about all these markets and the market expansion, the product expansion, the customer base, I'll take off what Toun said. Toun was like, Africa is a very interesting continent. And you see these patterns also very different across the continent. So in East Africa, where we actually started out, you find out that consumers like longer term loans. So loans, once you have a loan product, it's more around 12 months, 24 months, things like that. When you come over to the divide on West Africa, you find out they like shorter products. And so being able to actually, first of all, go into each market to test different type of products, well, same product, but different, avenues on, like, for instance, the loan product, to see how best can we operate in this market. And in Nigeria, what did we find out? We find out that people like 6 months loans. So they don't want 12 months. No one wants to be tied into a very long loan. They want a short loan. They want to consume that loan as quickly as possible and move on to the next product too as well. And we also saw that similarity in Ghana too. And so it was very, very important that, like, when we're doing the product work, when we're doing the market research, when we're trying to understand the customer psyche, what makes them tick, how they think about loans and things like that, we also had to take into consideration the culture of the environment. Like, we grew up in Nigeria thinking loans were bad. So, you borrow something, everybody's like, it was almost like a taboo. And so how do you then now play as a loan company in that same environment to tell them that credit is good, but the problem would have been the length of the credit. You don't want to take a loan that is too long. And so that's how we started to navigate each of those markets. While the product in itself is the same across board, the timing, the duration, and some of the other commercials of the product then now differ and is tailored market by market.
Thank you. That's very insightful. And I think I'll take away a key thing that you said was researching those markets. So not just jumping into markets and then figuring it out when you get there, but understanding what are the attitudes and behaviors towards your products and services and adapting them accordingly. So Preston, over to you. I have a lot of data questions for you today, Preston, so I hope you're ready. So Stears provides crucial data for decision making across borders. And I want to know, how can startups and founders here today better leverage data to navigate unfamiliar markets and environments?
Thank you. That's a bit of a loaded question because my answer is going to be buy a Stears license. That helps. But I guess to provide a bit of context around how we work and the response there, our product is fundamentally African in that it has data on 5 main markets. And that's Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt. We're planning to start covering Morocco as well in depth. We do have data on the other African markets, just not as in depth. So that's a distinction. I think data is difficult to find and access generally, and I think for people who want to actually find information about these markets, you're going to have to do a lot of digging. There is definitely a price barrier issue because the best platforms with the highest quality data are pretty expensive. And, we've seen that ourselves because, if you want one of the big information or data providers, and they don't really cover Africa enough depth, but they will be charging you, $25,000 for, single user access. So you're sort of left with online research and Google and those sort of tools, and they can be useful, but they're not always in depth. I think the best way to actually get information, apart from using platforms like Stears, which you should use, is also locals. I think on ground is the way we have seen it ever work. Before we expanded into Kenya and South Africa, I did go to Kenya and South Africa with my team, and we actually I think we've gone to Kenya multiple times now. And we just found we needed contacts there. We needed people who could ask questions, who could provide, explanations to things. I remember looking at South African listed companies, and there's a way companies are named if they're listed on a stock exchange. And we're looking at South Africa, and it just wasn't following general convention. And we had to call a fund manager in South Africa and ask, why does this work this way on stock exchange, and explain this is the history, this is why it's done this way. So ChatGPT provided a response to that, but it wasn't all that accurate. But that fund manager was able to say, this is why it happens this way, and this is the way to think about it. So I do think that it's not an easy thing to do, being very transparent, right? Even for us, getting the data is quite hard. And if you're looking for industry data, the truth is, aside from using platforms, again, you're probably going to work with local consultants to really do market mapping, to help you track a value chain, those sorts of things. We have made strides in that. But again, even our product is very targeted at fund managers, so people looking from the investor perspective. And yes, if you need more, you're probably going to need to work with locals.
Brilliant, thank you. And we'll talk a little bit about the importance of partnerships, but you make such a critical point about having contacts, having a grassroots sort of approach to being on ground. Thank you, Preston. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about adapting to diverse markets and consumer behavior, which we've touched on a little. And I mean, we all know at this point that Africa is not a country. And I want to know how each of you have adapted your business models to meet local consumer preferences, and what advice you would give to startups and founders here today. So I have quite a specific question for you, Ayo. And that is on how you've tailored your offerings to different regions and their varying healthcare needs. So as a sort of health tech provider, how have you done that, especially in regions where there's varying digital confidence and digital adoption?
Okay, thank you. I would first of all advise anybody starting up across Africa that you would have sleepless nights. I can guarantee you that. Africa as a whole is a very, very unique market space, right? No two markets is the same. But for you to really expand across, first of all, you need to have a core offering. That core offering has to be like standardized across all systems. And then you can now go into the market, like Preston said earlier, right? You need field agents. You need to understand what the market is. Like I mentioned earlier, we're in 3 countries currently, and I can guarantee you that those 3 countries have different feel. Kenya is a very easygoing market. They like taking things slow, right? Lagos, Nigeria is just a different entire market entirely, where everybody wants something like yesterday, right? So for healthcare space, you need to first of all go down there, understand what those market is, have a core offering, then you can now start adapting those core offering into those markets, right? Ethiopia itself, for example, even though most of them speak English, all right, but you still have to put America into the core apps, right? So they have to understand what you are even selling. So have a standardized market, have locals, in short, higher locals, not even have locals, higher locals. You have to, they understand those markets better than you. You have the brain, you have the ideas, but they understand how to take those ideas to their people. So you need to hire locals, you need to understand the market. You should spend at least 3 months on ground, like Preston said. Go down there yourself, have meeting with the institutions, have meeting with government agents, sit down with even the core customer itself and ask them, this is what I'm bringing to you. How do you think it can help you improve your day-to-day activities? They will tell you. Usually these guys are really, really willing to tell you what they want. They'll tell you, then you cannot adapt it. But first of all, have a core value. Because if you go there and tell them, I'm trying to, they'll not even listen to you. So you tell them, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I make it fit into you? They'll not sit with you, tell you, this is what we want. Adjust it this way, adjust it that way. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Ayo. Now, on your point about sleepless nights, can I get a show of hands how many founders, co-founders, business owners we have here in the audience? Can you raise your hand if you're a founder, co-founder? Okay, and how many of you, of those that have raised your hand, are sleeping more than 8 hours a night? No? Nobody? So, Ayo, I think you have a point. Right, now moving on to the role of partnerships. I think when it comes to starting, founding, growing a company, it definitely takes a village. And partnerships is crucial when expanding into new markets, which I think we've touched on already. So I would like you just to continue sharing about the key kind of partnerships that have helped you scale and what's really made those partnerships successful. I do just wanted to start with Toun and ask you, so from a talent and HR perspective, how important have local partnerships been in helping you establish a healthy workforce and expanding into new regions?
So I think, even for us and the clients that we support, and even in the roles that I've been in where we've expanded into countries like Rwanda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Namibia, different countries. So I would say that the first thing is, everyone has mentioned, you need to hire local. So in the beginning, you may not actually have an opportunity to hire local, which is why we say to you, get a local consultant, to get someone who already understands the lay of the land. And what are the things that they can do for you from a people and a talent perspective. One, they can even help you understand their labor laws. It's difficult, how many of you have read the Nigerian labor law before? By a show of hands. Okay, I see 1, 2, 3 hands. So 3 hands in this room, right? Then imagine having to learn that labor law for other countries and all the different countries that you go into. You would make mistakes. So the first thing that they can do is help you understand the labor laws. Another thing that they would help you do is even understand how to write contracts, how to create or adapt your employment handbook into what is permissible in their country. They would help you understand what the classifications are, what employees should look like, be like, what the workforce should be like. They'd also help you onboard as well. And just like Ayo has said, they can take everything that you already have in Nigeria and create it in such a way that it's still the same thing, but it applies to the different countries. So that's what partnership looks like. And obviously, over a period, you can then let go of the consultants and hire local HR managers or HR business partners or what have you. But those are the ways, those are examples of the ways that partnerships can help you from a people and talent perspective. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Toun. And Babajide, so you talked about some of the markets that M-Copper operates in, from Kenya, starting in Kenya, Uganda, more recently South Africa. What are some of the lessons that you've learned in terms of establishing and nurturing partnerships in different regions?
So when you think about it, you find out that, like, just as the countries are not the same, even the partners, despite maybe being in the same segment or being the same company, but different, opcos, that's what they call them, too. And so I'm talking about telcos in this place. You find out that the way they are and the way they operate and even their technology stack is very different. And so one thing I always say is, because it worked somewhere doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in the other place. I'll give you a very good example. When M-Copper started, they started off with Safaricom. Safaricom, M-Pesa, customers were able to get data, just being an M-Copper customer, you get data. So that is a partnership framework. But when you look at it, there is no Safaricom in Nigeria. There's no Safaricom in Uganda or South Africa. So now you need to work with the partners in that country and then figure out, okay, we have a framework of how we do some of these partnerships. But what are the trade-offs? What are the things that, could be unique to your own business that is different from that of Safaricom? So with cases like MTN here. In Kenya, you have dominance of Safaricom. Here in Nigeria, you have like 4 players in the market too as well. Some being more dominant than the others. And so you have to go out there and figure out, okay, who has the closest symbiotic relationship with my business and how can we partner in that business too as well. So we started off our partnership with Airtel and we went into like the Airtel stores. But then our biggest partnership is with MTN today, because we're able to then now work closely to what we have with Safaricom in Kenya and mirror that too as well. And why partners are very important is because sometimes they actually even make things easier for you. Like when we're going into South Africa, Vodafone was like, hey, we would welcome you, give you access to our shops. And those things kind of start to reduce your operating expense, because a partner has given you and said, hey, you're a symbiotic relationship with me, so I'm going to give you some of my infrastructure for you to actually run off. And that allows you to reduce the barrier of entry. It also allows you to create moats so that new people don't come into the market too as well, because at the end of the day, we are all here to do business. And like you said, locals, very important, because a white person will not understand why NEPA takes light in Nigeria. But I understand it, and if I'm on a call and the light goes off, I don't flinch, I continue my call the same way. But you see, every other person is like, oh, are you okay, Babajide? I'm like, of course, I'm fine. They just took the light. So those things, like, you can't understand it except you're local and you live in that market.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I think something that I've really taken from what you've said, Babajide, is the importance of having a shared vision in your partnerships, and not looking for partners where you just want something from them. You need to be able to have, it needs to be some symbiotic, and they also have something to gain from you as well. I think those can be the best kind of partnerships. And I just want to make some time for some personal reflections and sort of lessons learned in our experience. So I'm going to ask you, Preston, now looking back to your own journey as a founder, what do you think has been the most fulfilling part, especially about venturing into new markets, which I know has not been easy, but what have been one or many of the things that have kept you motivated in light of that challenge?
I think it actually comes down to being able to deliver on the promise we make and made to customers. Because, from the beginning, we wanted to be Pan-African, right? We saw very quickly that there wasn't just a data gap in Nigeria. There's a data gap in Kenya. There's a data gap in South Africa, all over the place. And pitching to customers who come from around the world and saying, you can get data on all African countries, and then being able to do that, that's been very fulfilling. But at the same time, I think one other big and important thing is being able to actually combine the different experiences of different Africans to create a product. Because you take political data, for instance, we do a bit of open data work, and we cover elections across the continent. Most people understand Nigerian politics, but understanding South African politics, it takes a bit of understanding of South African history. And Kenyan politics as well. People saw the riots that were happening not too long ago. But being able to bring different people together who can say, this is why this thing is happening in our market. This is the history behind it. And then being able to pass that knowledge on to the customer, I think that has been very powerful. And the second thing I would say is also just culture. Genuinely, for the team members, experiencing different cultures is always very interesting. I will also say, though, it is one of the honest challenges that everyone have to face. The cultures are different, and so your team members might not relate in the way you expect them to relate. The fact that our team is predominantly dominant in Lagos meant that Nigeria is still always the home country, and everyone else feels that. Everyone else, they know that when you're doing the all hands, where people in the office are they in Lagos, and when you're doing the retreat, where does the retreat happen? The end of year retreat or Christmas party, right? Where's the CEO base? Where are the important decisions made? And then one more thing, sometimes let's say there's something local that happens in a country, and so your employees are affected, like fuel price goes up, right? And everyone knows, they're coming the next morning and they know. But if you don't have enough team members in a particular country, then something local there that happens that affects that employee, you might not know, or two people might know, but it wouldn't cause you to make those kind of employee changes, or just those perks that you might put together if it was more people. So the numbers do matter, and it's important to be able to kind of make that work. We ended up sending some Nigerians to Kenya, letting them spend time there, just to again make sure the team was as blended as possible, and I guess we've seen some results from that.
Yeah, thank you, Preston. And is this on? Yeah, thank you, Preston. And I think you make a really good point about this. There's a lot of value in learning about different cultures and different customs, but then there's a level of insight that you really need in introspection when you are then creating an environment as a business for different cultures. And I think well done on having that level of insight and sensitivity towards meeting the needs of your employees in that way. Now, this is a question for anybody to answer. And this is about, what do you see as the most, or where do you see as the most promising growth opportunity for African startups over the next 5-10 years? And are there any sectors or regions that you get particularly excited about?
I'm particularly excited about consumer lending, so credit too as well. Like, you think about it, so Africa has a young workforce. They are consuming a lot of things. Everyone is getting on the internet, smartphone, consuming data, whatever it is. And you think about income and income disparity with Africa to the West and Latin America. In fact, when you look at it with some of the startups, I'm sure Preston will have more information around it. But for the average Latin America customer, you get 5 times the lifetime value that you can get in Africa. So imagine that income disparity. And that's Latin America. We're not talking about America itself, God's own country. But when you think about what is important, it's how do we continuously grow the economy in Africa? It's through lending, it's through consumer lending, be it companies like M-Kopa, other people too as well, who are playing in that lending space and extending ownership to individuals at that point in time. Regions that I would say I'm excited about, all of Africa is exciting. Some of it a lot more challenging than the others too as well. Some of it a lot more rough around the edges than the others too, because of the infrastructure deficit. But you can't deny that many of the problems that we face in Africa is almost similar. It's political, it's a lot of infrastructure deficit, it's connectivity issues, because data is very expensive in Africa too as well. And so those are some exciting things that over the next 10 years I would see that the cost would either come down or would moderate to a certain point. When you look at India and how India has been able to go through their transformation, it was, the cost of data actually like just coming down. So for me, those are the things that like excite me. Those are the things that like keep me up. Although I am not a founder, so this is from an employee standpoint.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful. And Ayo, are there any markets, regions, or industries that are exciting you at the moment, or that you have your eye on?
This is going to be from my own selfish point of view because I'm a tech head, right? I'll first of all say this. You did mention something earlier, right? There will be a lot of local problem regional solutions, right? Every country is going to have their own problem, but then someone is going to do a lot of regional solutions that's going to apply across board, right? We at LifeBank, currently, people see us as a out tech business, but we're actually technology first. So I'll see a lot of expansion into machine learning AI. We've been doing this for years. I don't know why it's not a big deal, but we've been doing this for years, and it's going to be a lot of data needed, right? So if a company like Stears is out there and you still want to compete with them, I will say this is your time. Data is king. So there'll be a lot of data business out there that will be providing solutions out for the tech companies, and then there'll be a lot of machine learning AI. I know I've had some people say you guys don't have electricity yet, and why are you looking into this? Trust me, this is where the future is. If I'm looking at region, right, I would say Western Africa and Central Africa, those are the biggest fast-growing region I'm seeing currently. And if you can solve problems in these regions, you will be able to scale across other regions, right? Southern Africa already has some of the infrastructures, so scaling and expanding to those space will not be as a big problem as expanding to Central Africa. So look at what you can solve in those areas and expand towards those areas.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And just as we wrap up our conversation, I just have a closing question for each of you to answer quite succinctly before we go into the question and answers. So starting with you, Toun, what one key piece of advice would you offer to fellow founders here in the audience who are embarking on the journey of scaling across borders in Africa?
I would say just try. And I find that one of the things that kills founders and our dreams is that we do a lot of planning and we don't launch out. We plan, we look at figures, we go to Preston, we look at data, we see how data works against us, and we just don't start. So I would just say try, and the easiest way to try is, if visas would allow you, right? Go into those countries that you're looking to go into communities that are like ours, right? So tech communities, figure out what's happening there, learn a bit more about what they do, learn a bit more about just what works and what doesn't work. And that's the easiest way, because if we sit back here and just try and look at data, map out things, Preston himself is looking at data, and sometimes data is not dataing, and he's having to go in and meet fund managers. So I would say just launch out, just try. The earliest you try, the earliest you know if there's an opportunity for you out there or not. Right, so that would be my advice. Just going, and I say this, and I know you said very quickly, but I say this because one of the things that even I have made mistakes on. I am sitting down on it. I am analyzing. Analysis paralysis has almost finished me there, and then I just don't take that step. Why? It comes a little too late, and then other people do it, and you sit back and you're like, oh my goodness, I had that idea, but they've done it. So it's first thing would be try. Just go on holiday, visit, go into communities, go local, understand the nuances, and then you can make a better informed decision. Thank you.
Fantastic advice. Thank you too. Preston.
Yeah, so just very quickly, on the other question, I think Egypt is a particularly exciting market. We have an exit problem across Africa for different asset classes, and seeing how Egypt has successfully exited business over the last decade is quite impressive. But in terms of the second question, and this might be too honest, but I will say it anyway, I think plan for 2 waves of teams. And I say 2 waves of team because I think if you go into a new market, the first team you hire you make so many mistakes and they might be so disgruntled, they pack up and leave, and then you hire the second wave that becomes the team that you actually work with long term. I think that's just the reality, right? You make lots of plans, but you might not get the contract right, and you might not, get the employee benefits right, the culture right, and then, you find that even the talent, your assessment of the talent, the pay, there's so many different things that you might not get right. So be mentally prepared if you have to sort of reset. But when you reset, you're probably going in with a very clear mindset of this exactly the kind of person, the kind of team that I want. And I think in that second wave of hiring, you are very clear. You've seen stuff before. You can call bullshit. You can say, no, that doesn't work. You have been sold to, you've tried some of the tools, maybe on your second tool, your second law firm, your second consultant, all those things. Right? I think that second team is the real team. And maybe you go to your third team. Who knows, right? But just mentally, the idea that you go in, you hit it, that first golden hire, that had the right CV and look very good. I don't think it's as realistic in practice. So just prepare for that change.
Wonderful. Thank you, Preston. And I really love that piece of advice. Prepare for 2 waves of teams. I'm going to take that for sure and pass that on. Ayo, please, some closing recommendations here for our fellow founders.
I'll say Preston said 2. I'll say 3 or 4. To be honest, I think he's looking at LifeBank and he's like, is that the reality on ground? It's 4. Think of 4. The third one will be your third mistake, and then the fourth one will be like a shuffle of the third and the second one. Okay. My advice is this: break things. Build products first, and then go to the market, and then you are going to tell you what they want. You go back, you will do it again, and then go back and you do it again. Internally in LifeBank, there are products we've built. I'm not sure if Toun can remember. There's a product we had on Facebook a while back when Mark was around. That product is dead, and we've already rebuilt it again and again and again. So build things, throw it out there. You're going to realize what the market wants, and then go back and do it again. So break things, experiment as much as you can. It's not easy because it's going to be like you feel like you're doing it wrongly, but when you get it, when it clicks, it's going to be like a light bulb moment in your head, right? So just do it. Don't think about it too much. Do it.
Thank you, Ayo. Just do it. And Babajide, some words of wisdom for you, please.
Progress before perfection. That's what I would say. Progress before perfection. You're always looking to get the perfect product out, but you're never really going to get a perfect product. And that's why you have version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, launch and go. Because like Toun said, you wake up and you're like, oh, but I had that idea. Yeah, it was in your head. No one knows you had that idea. So progress before perfection.
Wonderful. Thank you, Babajide. And looking at some of the questions that were asked today, I know that a lot of them have been answered in the conversation. So just as we wrap up, I'd love to give our panelists a round of applause, please. I think this has been such an insightful conversation. And as we look to the future of African startups, it's inspiring to see the innovation, the determination, and the passion that will continue to shape the continent and the business landscape. I hope each and every one of you here today leaves with a renewed sense of confidence and inspiration to embark on your journey, especially when it comes to scaling into new markets. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone at the Moonshot Conference, for CC Hub, and for our panelists. Let's continue building, collaborating, and growing together. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.